Hey, good morning, everybody. My name's Captain Matt Robinson. I'm the Deputy Director and Portfolio Manager at the Marine Corps Software Factory. Thank you for being here. I'm going to rely heavily on my slides, so if you can't see the screen, you might want to move over there. So I'm a 0302 infantry officer. I graduated IOC in 2017. After leaving 3-6, went to Naval Postgraduate School and got a degree in modeling simulations, which is in the computer science department. And from there, I was doing my payback tour at OAD in Quantico when the Marine Corps Software Factory let out a notice that they were starting up in Austin, Texas. And I called the contact on there, who's my now boss, Lieutenant Colonel Charlie Bach, and he was able to make it happen. So I got there within 30 days, and I've been on there since day one. So we started in July of 2023 in Austin, Texas, co-located with the Army Software Factory. That's why we're there. The whole reason we exist, and imagine this for me, is if you're familiar with Naval Postgraduate School, the Marine Corps and the Navy, they will send people like me who from the infantry, where you're doing terrain models with rocks and crayons, and they're saying, hey, tomorrow you're going to start a degree in computer science. And so when you're there for 2 years, you're learning all kinds of curriculum, and you have an option. At the end of your 2 years, you can produce a thesis that you really bust your ass and you work really hard on, and you spend late nights. And the reason you do it, and the reason that they take Marines from the infantry, or from any MOS really, is because you're identify with the problem very much. So when you work, you can work really hard and produce a thesis, or you can golf a lot, and MPS is like, hey, we really need you to graduate. You have a BIC at the end of this, so we really have to. There's a saying. It's MPS is a pump, not a filter. So you can make it through, and so you can do the bare minimum. But the thing is whether you're the Marine who stays up late and works really hard, or you're the Marine who takes it easy and golfs a lot, your thesis, the thing that you research for 2 years and you should be very passionate about, 99.9% of the time, that thesis ends up as a PDF on the library's website, never to be read. I say never to be read, but the actual, we have the data, the most pinged IP of that website is the Chinese. So it's very frustrating. And so there's another vignette that I like to paint, which is in 2017, the Marine Corps started something called the Innovation Challenge, and they basically said, hey, Marines are the individual Marine is our best weapon. We believe in this bottom-up refinement. We believe they have good ideas. So hey, we're going to give you an innovation challenge. You work on what you want to work on, and why don't you present it to us? And at the end, we're going to take whatever you make, we're going to mainstream it, and everybody will use it throughout the Marine Corps, because we believe you. We believe the corporal who's doing CMRs, he can actually make it a more effective process. And so 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, there was a lot of winners. And they got their award, they got their handshake, they got their letter saying, hey, well done, Marine. And none of it ever got operationalized. It just died because they didn't have a path to production, they didn't have ATO authority, they didn't have the money to do it. And so it's between these two vignettes, whether you're an officer at NPS or you're a junior Marine, it's you can pour your heart and soul into stuff, and we do. I think the Marine ethos is we do believe the Marines are capable of these things, and yet it never can get to operation to make a difference. And so I like to illustrate those because I believe the Marine Corps Software Factory is the answer to those two pressing issues. And I think a lot of times, you might hear Marine Corps Software Factory and there's a handful of dudes coding applications, and you're like, is this another gimmick thing? Is this another innovation cell that we've heard, every day for 19 briefs? And I just to say, with almost 2 years in, 18 months in, I'm really proud of the work that we do. I think based off hearing some of these panels from, high-ranking individuals, what keeps being asked for in the DoD, things that sound like uniformed talent, who are technologists, who know how to use AI in applications and software development, that is what we're doing every single day. And so I'm pretty excited to walk you through our presentation. All right, so the first things first, our mission. what we do is we are creating Marines to be application developers. This encompasses learning how to do user-centered design, product management, and then the software engineering, how to incorporate data, how to get it approved through security. And the way that we accomplish this is we do it by working on real problems. And so, we say, hey, it'd be irresponsible for us to spend 3 years at this duty station and getting a training education, but all you're doing is like, Sally's ice cream shop, and now I can code a script in Python. Like we're actually making real applications. And so when the Marines are leaving in 3 years, they're more than capable to do this at the different FMF units. So the whole genesis of this is like, as we're pivoting towards Indo-Pacific, or as we have pivoted, we're seeing like some of the reliances on contractors or constant connectivity, understanding what the mission is. Like these things are starting to change a lot, where we'll be inside the WES and you're not going to be able to have your contractor there with you. What happens when something goes wrong and you have to phone back at 2 a.m. kind of thing. And everything is obviously becoming much more software centric. And so if we don't have an in-house capability, how are we going to address some of these things? I won't spend too much time on this because I think it gets hit every talk, but like our adversaries know this. They have pivoted in this way. There's manufacturing issues, like the chart's obvious, and then the in-house talent inside of the DoD as uniformed developers is very small. And the Chinese realized this 5 years ago, and they started something called the support force, information support force, where they combined all these elements, and obviously they have the ability to conscript and send software engineers to do whatever they need. And then obviously like lessons from Ukraine and Russia. So the Marine Corps Software Factory, and again, we work alongside the Army, is our attempt to get in-house talent, just like any Fortune 500 company has entire software engineering departments. And we're not trying to be a unit that's made of tens of thousands of software engineers, but at least some capability in-house to address some of these issues. This is a slide that just says, okay, so who told you to do this? A bunch of NDAs and high-ranking officials have seen this capability. We're losing some of the best talent to industry and they want to be Marines. We just don't have a mechanism to keep them. We can't make software fast enough. Another theme of this week is be faster, and so this is a swing back. Okay, so what we like to say is on the spectrum of, let's say, construction, you have a treehouse, a custom home, and an apartment complex or skyscraper. We are not trying to do anything that acquisitions does. We're not trying to make the next F-35. Industry exists for a very important reason, and we utilize industry a lot. So it's like it's not the intent to become a new systems command or a new acquisitions arm. The intent is to find these like low-hanging fruit and then rapidly produce applications that can have outsized impact. And so we like to use this analogy of we're like the tree house, low code, no code, or the custom house that's finding a very specific application that needs to be built and then rapidly executing. So just like a combat engineer will come across a gap or a small river that needs to be forded, that combat engineer goes up there, he applies this very specific solution, he gets the battalion across, and then they keep going. And so we're also not in the sustainment game as well. When we create applications, our intent is to eventually pass them off to larger programs of record, get them to a state where maybe maintenance or security is not a everyday occurrence. Like I'll talk about how we do security, but the intent is there's a saying in industry which is like software is never done, and the reason that's a saying is because if your software is done, your competitor is going to outcycle you and make something better. In the DoD, it's like sometimes all we have to do, if once we've made a very specific solution that's kind of in the treehouse, custom house category, we just make sure the scans are good, make sure the security's up to date, and we don't have to devote massive teams that are completely feature building that don't actually have a huge ROI. So one of the one of the best things about the software factory is the Marines that we have that work there. So if you just, you don't have to be a statistician or a mathematician to know that out of 400,000 sailors and Marines, you have some at the very far end of the bell curve in terms of IQ. Like those Marines exist, and we have several at our organization who've been coding since they've been 8 years old. And so they joined the Marine Corps because they're patriots and they have a love of country and they wanted to serve their country. And what ends up happening is they do their 4 years, and a lot of times their experience as a Marine doesn't, because you become a Marine. The Marine Corps doesn't necessarily change for you, and you find yourself in a communications battalion and you're doing CMRs 4 months of the year, and you're just like, man, I think I made a mistake. Well, a lot of those guys who are super passionate about software development, artificial intelligence, we've found them who already possess this talent, and we allow them to be the Marines that they've always wanted to be, the organization that they thought they were joining, and they start to make applications across the entire fleet. And so the ones I'm thinking of have, in 18 months, have I'll save it, but have worked with special operations, have gone overseas, have worked with recon units, an entire experience that they would have never been afforded to them if they would have just stayed on their path. And the real truth is I hope it's common sense, but the question is how are you going to retain these Marines? And with so many of them, they're already gone. They don't want to stay and be. They don't want to be like their boss's boss, and so in their mind they're exiting the Marine Corps, but they love the institution, they love their country, and they want to serve. And we are providing them a mechanism in which they can do the thing that they wanted to do, and get that Marine Corps experience while giving the institution a outsized impact. And that's what I'll get to here momentarily. So the way we do it is we have quite a few applicants. We do two kinds of interviews. We do a behavioral and a technical. So ideally, you'd love to find somebody who's been coding since they're 8 years old. Not always the case, but we look for things. We look if they have curiosity, if they like music, if they're into stuff, hobbies like chess. How does their brain function specifically for software engineering? Do they have kind of an engineer mindset? And then if they do the product management or the designer track, what is their artistic capability and that kind of thing. And from that, we do the technical and then the behavioral. The other thing is you have gunnies working with lance corporals and industry pair. And so if you're working with somebody every day for 2 years, sitting side by side, looking at the same screen, do you have the emotional intelligence to be told you're wrong if you're a 32-year-old gunny by a 21-year-old lance corporal whiz kid? Those intangibles are vastly important. And so those are the things we screen for. When they get to us in Austin, we send them through the Army's technical accelerator. So there's 200 soldiers. Right now there's 15 of us. And they spend 115 training days getting just deep immersion. And this is the purely academic portion. So they get about 30 college credits. We're co-located at Austin Community College. And it's just programming fundamentals or product management, design fundamentals. And when they graduate, what we do is we put them on enablement team. And so what that looks like is for the next year, we practice something called extreme programming. Extreme programming is a subset of the Agile process, which is 2 keyboards, 2 mice, 1 monitor. So every day, every line of code, they are being taught and trained exactly how to do it. And so this used to be an industry standard for a little bit until everybody would get burned out. So we have them on the clock for about a year to hopefully not burn them out, but that's also a benefit of being Marines, is we can kind of just tell them what to do. So when they leave that, they remain on the product teams, and we just continue application development for the remaining time that they have here. So 3-year tour in total. And in that 2.5 years after the technical accelerator, I just want to emphasize that's real applications that are being developed. So we have a typical product team, product manager, designer, and then software engineers. And depending on the Marines' time outside of technical accelerator, or if they need to be there paired for 6 months versus 18 months, just depending on how they're progressing. Like, we take all that into consideration. But your typical product team, and then what we do is we leverage the Army and their platform services. So they have an AWS GovCloud, as well as a security team. So whenever we are building applications that are cloud native, Kubernetes, we will just entirely utilize their platform. So we do scans literally every day. Anytime there's CVE, we immediately fix it, like the actual sec and DevSecOps. And so that's been a really great relationship, and the Army's been really good to us. But we also make applications that don't necessarily need to live on the cloud. So if you're familiar with TAC, Tactical Assault Kit, we make TAC plugins. We've made executables that we just want to have, maybe when you don't have network connectivity, and we just go through the ATO process. But when we pull it off the platform, it already has inherited a lot of the controls, so the ATO process is much more expedited. My role as the portfolio manager and deputy is I do a lot of this speech a lot, but I do a lot of outsourcing with the different units. So I have a backlog of probably 60 different applications, ideas that have been requested. The first thing I like to do is figure out if that already exists somewhere. We say it a lot, but like, we're not in this for like the Marine Corps Software Factory's glory. Like, if there's a solution that exists and you can have it quickly and it does what you need, like that's the big win for us. We've referred a lot of people for low-code, no-code applications to a program called EIS, Enterprise Information Services. So that was going to be a line of effort for us to do low-code, no-code, but they have dedicated teams that can make all kinds of Power Apps, Power BI, and we've had a good experience with customers coming back to us and saying, hey, that they built exactly what we needed, and so that's good. So I do the intake and scoping, at least round one, where I figure out what they're asking for, and then I kind of bucket into the three main thrusts of the Marine Corps: talent management, training and education, and force design, which really is just kind of tactical in nature. And then from there, it becomes just a constant adjudication process of where does our priorities lie, what is our in-house talent, how fast can we get it out. Like, we are not interested in making applications that are going to take we don't really like to go over a year, and so if we can do it in less than a year, genuinely we'd like to do it in like 3 months or so, but depending on what the impact of the application is depending on what we decide to work on. And so for the past 18 months we've had just incredible autonomy, which I know it can be scary for higher headquarters, but what that allows us to do is when we hit blockers, whether it's establishing API contracts or just like security concerns that everybody has to deal with, we're able to instantly pivot to other applications. So we have, and I find it great because I left a unit that was very like structured. You take your intake of your problems twice a year, you map it out for the next year, and like you're not really incentivized to go fast, and it's just like we have Marines that are physically with their own eyes seeing the impact that they're making. They're having tier 1 guys tell them, hey, this is amazing, I need you to fix X, Y, and Z. And so like the impact, I have guys who stay there till 10 p.m. at night, not because they're supposed to or anything, just because they love what they're doing, and the impact is immense. So now for like the actual things we've built. The first application I'll talk about is my career. So we got to the Software Factory in Austin, and it was like August 1st of 2023. And prior to that, we had some kind of a warm-started conversation with Manpower, so MMEA, Manpower of Enlisted Affairs. And they basically said, hey, we've been doing this roadshow process the same way for 75 years. And if you're not familiar with the roadshow, each Marine is assigned a monitor, and a monitor is someone who cuts orders for the Marines. So what'll happen is a monitor will say, hey, we're doing the roadshow, there's going to be 20 of us, we're going to show up at Camp Pendleton on March 1st at the gym. Show up there if you want to talk to me and get your new set of orders. So what you'll have is, and this is how it's been done for 75 years, is you'll have 1,000 Marines show up at a gymnasium, and you'll have 20 monitors who will see like 20-30% of them. And you'll have a Marine who sits there all day, 10 hours, and he wants to re-enlist, and he just doesn't get the chance to talk to his monitor. Or you have a guy who's on the fence, and he sits around for 8 hours, and it's like, you know what, I think I'm good. I'm gonna exit the service. And so we created a very simple application. We got a working piece of software in 64 days, and it basically functions like Great Clips, like nothing revolutionary. You get your spot in line, you get text messages to say, hey, you're third, second, first in line, you're up. And the real problem was like, well, all that is an issue, but if we can't decrease the throughput of 1,000 Marines talking to monitor, like we need to make the conversations more fruitful. And so we created like a data entry form, which is obviously common sense stuff. Whereas the first 20 questions that gets asked, hey, what's your EDIPI? Where were you? Where do you want to go? The monitor already has that information, so like the conversation starts where it should be, like right when he sits down. And so what's not shown is we have a queuing system that the monitors view, that he's like sending out the text messages. He can let his Marines know, like, hey, here are the things that I have available to me. So like there's already a shared understanding before that conversation begins. And so obviously like retention and recruiting is a huge emphasis in the Marine Corps and military right now. And so there's a lot of efforts in there, but we did play a small part, directly complemented by the director of MMEA. So within 6 months, the roadshow began. 14,500 interviews have been conducted on our application. From 2023 to 2024, the West Coast Roadshow attendance went up 81%. And then the like throughput of interviews also went up, I think 75%. Itemize, this is an application that's in development, and so one of the like throwaway comments every time I have a scoping session is, hey, can you make something for my CMR? So CMR is get every piece of inventory that belongs to a battalion or regiment and lay it out, and we're going line by line, serial numbers, to figure out where all our stuff is. And so the joke is the responsible officer, the guy who's signing his name for $15 million worth of gear, he is always better than the last guy, and that guy was always worse than the guy before, and that guy was always worse. And it's because it's all taken on 6-part folders that are like in the hundreds, if not thousands, of pages, combined with thousands of pages of regulations. And so what happens is the RO says, hey, Corporal, if you don't do this right, I'm going to get fired. So go figure it out and make sure you use pen and not pencil, and all of these random, or not random, but regulations to make the inventory process. So we call it CMR data. And so we took that, we digitized it, and we're actively connecting it to GCSS Marine Corps so that each responsible officer will be able to have his RO account on our system called Itemize, and the Marine will be able to conduct inventory on his own personal cell phone after logging in through CAC authentication, and then conduct the signatures needed. So there's no more, hey, we found 94 discrepancies because you forgot to initial whatever page, or you used pen instead of pencil. We're ensuring that this doesn't become the resource burden that it's become for so many Marine Corps units. And so we're in active development of this. We are working with the FASMO because they realize like this is a big issue. It's like they're not adversarial to this. They're like right alongside us as partners. And so we're pretty excited about this one. And it has the potential to save the Marine Corps at like tens of millions of dollars if successful. This application is called Sparta, so this was also one of our first ones. This is going to go hand in hand with another one, so just to let you know. Commercial off-the-shelf radar. So the Muse and 2nd LAR recon units, they'll take commercial off-the-shelf maritime radars, SIMRAD for Runo, something you could feasibly buy from Cabela's, and they'll take that data. It'll get served through a third-party software. And then what we were able to do with Sparta is take that, translate it into Cursor on Target messaging format that can be ingested by TAC and other common operational pictures, and then we provided a GUI. So now instead of a Marine who's kind of at the edge node not being able to see what his tracks look like, he's able to change that to Cursor on Target and then disseminate it. We made an APK version, a TAC version, We incorporated UAS, so other Marine units strictly use it for tracking their own UAS in the sky. We're able to fuse different sensors, so if you had multiple, let's say, SIMRAD radars picking up maritime vessels, and they have slightly different tracks, it'll fuse one by picking, like algorithmically deciding which one is more accurate. And then it's able to function in DDoS environments, so completely disconnected from the internet. This is an application that has been really popular for us. And so they had a working piece of software in 72 days, and then NIWC LANT recently, about a year ago, is like, hey, this is so successful. We're fielding 288 of these SIMRAD and Furuno kits out to different units, and we're going to use Sparta as the application to be the COTS disseminator, translator, and the user interface. So we're really excited about that. So that's a massive program. And then they asked us the next question, which is, hey, that third-party software, it's a foreign service, it's got tons of errors and bugs. Is there anything you can do to make that better? And so what that is actually, and it's sold to each unit, each license, $15,000, which is cost prohibitive for so many units who are trying to be mission capable. You have to pay for so much stuff, and if you can't fork up $15,000 annually for one MAC address, then you can't use the software. So it had a lot of issues with it as well, and so we took a swing. So this is what I'm talking about. A Marine, 20 years old, one of those high IQ Marines who's been coding since he's been 8 years old. And I said, hey, you know, this is a step up from my career. And so you start doing some background research, and if we can hit like a critical mass, then like we'll devote a team for it. And so in his off time, I've been on probably 5 to 10 TAD trips with him, airports, hotel rooms, staying up till 1 in the morning, while he's getting his bachelor's in mathematics, buys 4 radar theory textbooks on his own, and we reached a point where we're like, okay, we're going to be successful. And so we devoted a full-time team to it. Proud to say we successfully tested it at Steel Night in Camp Pendleton last month in December. And so we're going to save NIWC LANT just with that program with the SIMRADs, $5 million annually, as well as getting asked, this application is being asked from ONR, NIWC PAC, and McWill, who's all going to put it on their systems. And so I think this is an application that really illustrates why Marines can be faster given our access and ability to do this kind of work. Is I asked the McWill, I was like, so if you were going to do this on your own, he's like, this would easily cost me $3 to $5 million just to develop. It would take me a year or 6 months to a year to actually get the contract out. It'd take me a year to get designs. It'd take me another year to actually have the application, and then I'd give it to CDD, and CDD would say, not really at the top of our priorities list. So you're looking 3 to 5 years down the line, $3 to $5 million in development costs, and I had 2 Marines plus their contracted pair get to a spot where we have the MVP in 6 months. So I just say that as an illustration of like, you know, like the theme of this week has been, we have to innovate, we have to be faster. It's like there are processes that just make that impossible unless you have the inside track. And so we kind of operate with like, we're just gonna do it, and we're just gonna figure it out, and it's been really successful so far. All right, this is an application called Raider. So Marsoc, who's actually talking about this application in room 3 right now, is they came to us and they said, hey, we use this device by Khaki Systemware called the Spectrum Guard Pro. So the Spectrum Guard Pro is the premier spectrum analyzer tool that you can buy within the whole DoD. So what Marsoc does is they take their Spectrum Guard Pro, and this is true of other Marine Corps units throughout the fleet as well as SOF units, and they say, hey, we're going to go into, let's say, a third world country, and we're going to analyze the spectrum. And the reason you do this is because when you come in and you bring your own comm equipment and your own gear, you're going to change what the spectrum environment looks like if you're not cognizant of what it should look like. And so they establish a baseline, and they build their comm plan based off of what the spectrum in that area looks like. So Austin would look different than, San Diego would look different than Somalia. And so an adversary with a similar capability would be able to notice anomalies in the spectrum. So they want to be a tree within the forest. So that's how they build their COI plan. And they said, hey, we have this great tool called the Spectrum Guard Pro. The issue is it's incredibly complex. So what you're looking at is our application, not the Spectrum Guard Pro. It's just got graph lines everywhere and exceedances, and just you have to be trained specifically on that device in order to properly read it as well as operate it. And so what was happening is the SOC-C, Special Operations Command communicators, is they would take screenshots of what their screen looked like. They'd send it back to Stone Bay Spectrum office, who doesn't have a 24/7 service, and they say 24 to 48 hours later, like, hey, you were exceeding yourself, which what that means is like the adversary with the same capability sees you. Like you're not, no matter how sneaky you think you are, like if they have directional finding capability, line of bearings, like they know where you are. And this is exactly what's getting people killed in Eastern Europe. So they said we need make it marine dummy proof. And so we made a stoplight chart via a WinTAC plugin, whereas we now ingest their COI data, which wasn't ever in a standardized format. Now there is one, into our application, which is a WinTAC plugin. We worked with Khaki Systemware, who exposed their API for us. And now in real time, it's being monitored. So green means you are operating within your emission control levels, within your PACE plan. Red means there has been an exceedance. Either you are exceeding, and if it's not you're probably actively being jammed by the adversary, and you need to roll your PACE plan. So you need to go from primary to alternate or to contingency. And then the yellow light just means like that has happened in the past 5 minutes. This has been a good one. So the MARSOC's using it. They've given it to the other special operations communities. It's being used throughout the Marine Corps. And they're actually using it with another product called the Beast, which it's called tipping and queuing, but our application is now tipping them that there is some sort of spectrum activity, and then they're using the Beast to conduct directional finding. So now it's being turned into a tool to find the enemy in their spectrum, whereas the Spectrum Guard Pro is primarily just a blue force monitoring. With that, that NPS vignette I kind of alluded to in the beginning. We had a Marine, he's a major, who his NPS thesis had a lot of, I guess, fanfare from TCOM and some of the other training agencies, and so they gave me a call and they said, hey, like, this thing you're saying about there's really good research, like we have that. Is there anything you can do about it? So if you're familiar with live virtual constructive training, it's basically live. You have a Marine running a range. He's got his M4 and his radio in hand. You have a sim, like virtual. You could have like a pilot in VR goggles flying an aircraft. You have constructive, which is actually like the computer application, which is plotting all three. So the pilot flying virtually is now on the constructive sim. The Marine who has his position location is now also on the constructive sim. So you can all see all these things come together. Obviously, it produces a lot of ways to train that are previously not possible, naval gunfire also. So what he was able to do in his thesis was he was able to take RF frequencies coming off of a radio, captured with a software-defined radio, and then propagate that, virtually emulate it, and propagate it into a simulator. Hope that makes sense. It's kind of complicated. So what this is able to do is you're able to visualize what your EMS signature looks like. So he basically was able to prove a concept. What we've done is we got some different devices, Raspberry Pis, Lime SDRs, RLT SDRs. We basically duct taped it together, and what we're doing is we are capturing live RF frequencies. We are then sending it to our TAC server. We are virtually emulating it and putting it in an RF propagation model so that Marines training in 29 Palms, what we can now do is place an enemy asset, which is like EW. So, hey, Marine, you're emitting, and he has no idea what that actually means. Like, what is the EMS spectrum? I don't know what that means. And so now we're able to show him, this is what you look like. Here's an enemy's capability. So we're putting generic to keep it unclassified, high, medium, low. this is what an enemy EW asset can do, this is how it'll see you, and now we're adjudicating your signature versus what you were briefed on as the EW's asset. I hope that makes sense. It's pretty complicated. But the way this is, why I love this and was very passionate about this work was because now the Marine who, nothing makes sense until you can actually see it. So whenever the coyote is throwing RDSIM around at you saying, hey, enemy discovered you, and he's like, no, you didn't. And he's showing on his ATAC client, here is the model, this is your live data, that's what the enemy's capability is, and that's why you're seeing. And so hopefully the training that will occur is a Marine now understands what it looks like to operate in the EMS spectrum. And so this is one that we are about 2 months into. We've hit some pretty key milestones, and we're looking forward to testing in 29 Palms next month. All right. Some of these videos aren't playing, but this is an application called Exodus. So the Army made this application, let's just call it V1, where for NEO evacuations, they had evacuees going through embassies, and it was a way to digitize the evacuees' information and then save it into S3 bucket, so that instead of kind of paper pencil process or different processes, they're able to do it on their phones, their like Samsung phones. We had a unit reach out to us, says, hey, there's some stuff going on in the world right now, can't talk about it, but can you create me an application that does this? I said, hey, the Army's got it, it's great. And they said, well, it's not exactly what we're looking for. We'd rather be able to take like a TSA passport scanner, and then kind of like the micro idea is like, let's get all this data entry out of the way so guys in gloves aren't typing it in, and really speed up the process, and then be able to track them from, okay, you went into entry A, you're now in holding cell B, you're on transport C, and now we know that you're back safe, and then route all that data. So we're like, well, another thing we try to do is like not burden the unit with like, okay, well now you need to buy a TSA scanner. So we're like, you already have ATAC devices, let's just scan the passport. So we did some machine learning. Sorry, the video's not playing right now, but essentially the passport comes up, you're able to do computer vision, it's taking the data at the bottom of the passport, digitizing it, and so now your 10 entry fields into your first 10 questions, you ask another 10, and then you start routing that data. This is obviously is pretty interesting to some of the task force in the Middle East, and as well as the border. We're now working with U.S. Army North for this application, and then it's also still in development. So like I said earlier, I kind of alluded to, like, we still run into security concerns and making sure we're getting the secure S3 buckets and approvals and all that stuff. And so I have engineers bouncing between this application and this application, and because the guys are passionate and love what they do, we're not kind of wasting time until security, figures their thing out. And so that's kind of how we've been operating. So if you're familiar with TAC, I've alluded to it a few times. It's called Tactical Assault Kit. It's made by the TAC Product Center. So it's a device that has many different forms. So there's ATAC, which stands for Android, meaning it can be held on your Android phone. There's WinTAC, Windows, and now there's TAC-X, which is supposed to be OS agnostic. And so there's iTac as well, iPhone. So right now you could download any of these from the App Store. There's a civilian version. So the military version is Tactical Assault Kit. The civilian version is Team Awareness Kit. So when you're building applications, like this is one of the softwares that's already approved. So what you can do is you can build plugins. And so there's, let's say, 100 components that come standard with when you download ATAC. What we can do is work with people like Khaki Systemware and get an API and make our own plugin for that Radar application. Like, that's how we did it. So when we were waiting for that API from Khaki Systemware for the Spectrum Guard Pro, my Marine's like, well, I guess I'll just design the application. So he goes to TAC Product Center looking for their design system. If you're not familiar with what a design system is, it's basically a library of components where you can more rapidly design an application from a library, so that you're not custom making every button, every scroll, drop down menu, slide bar. It's already there. this is also good for the users, because now users, every time they're downloading a new plugin, aren't trying to kind of relearn a new system. As if every time you downloaded, a new app on your iPhone, everything was just like completely different. It was very hard to learn. Like there's systems and there's ways that if you can't make it intuitive, people just aren't going to use your product. So it's a big deal. So he goes to find the design system. Lo and behold, it doesn't exist. So we made our own. And so we, within 3-4 weeks, as we're waiting for this API, we built our own design system, and we've, for both ATAC and WinTAC, we briefed it to the TAC Product Center. They said, this is so great, we're now going to make this the standard so that when people build applications in TAC, there is a general idea of what it should look like. Which is not to say it has to be exactly what the design system is, but the whole point is that users aren't having to relearn how to use the new TAC plugin every single time because of just like buttonology. So this has been great. We've sent it to basically everybody who's asked, and it should be live on TAC Product Center in the coming months. Reserve Hub, this is one that also we are paused right now, working out some API legalese, but the short of it is the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps came up to one of our gunnies. He said, I'm trying to find open BICs for reservists, and I have to go through like 14 different pages, and then they say you don't have access, so you have to request access. A month later, they say you've been granted, or whenever it is, but you've already, at that point, you forgot. So you go to the National Guard's website. They're offering $50,000 bonuses, and we're losing Marines because like data is not freely available. So we took that data, which is you can find, if you know where to look, that is occasionally updated every few months on PDF form. And we created this application. It's supposed to function a little like Zillow. So you type in your address, where you want to live, you type in what your MOS is, and now it's producing in terms of proximity, what is available to you, wherever you put your address in, as well as it highlights like what bonuses are available. So if you travel, they were losing Marines because they didn't know that if you're traveling over 150 miles, you get a $500 per travel period bonus. Now they're able to target, like if you're 03, but the only thing available to you is supply, they're now able to say, hey, even if you're in 03, you can fulfill a supply role. And so this is just a mechanism in which to like disseminate that information, go to Google, type in Marine Corps Reserves, and this will pop up. We have paused it because I do not want to put another application that has either old data or that you have to like manually refresh. So we're gonna do it the right way, get the API so that it's being fed every single day, and then hopefully keep some of the talent that is headed towards the reserves. SnapDB, this was, we don't work on this one anymore, but the idea was, hey, what if you're in total MCON, mission control, and you can't do any kind of RF? And the Strategic Capabilities Office was like, hey, what if you created QR codes that could just pass information picked up by cameras, like UAS cameras? So we just made an application that generates the QR code through our proprietary algorithms, and then it disseminates it on the client side. And so we successfully tested it, as you can see. That is a 10-foot by 10-foot QR code, so I wouldn't say it's super feasible at this point, but it was something we could make really quickly, get them the answer that they were looking for, and they said, appreciate that, we'll be in touch. And so that's where that is at. But it's just something like we knew we could do with just simple QR stuff. But the way, like some mechanisms that could make it useful is the way that we built the application is you could actually, let's say you had a slideshow or a video of QR codes that just rapidly went through. 10 of them were legit, 90 of them were fake. Our application would pick out the 10 that are legit, decode them. But we made the app. We didn't figure out the logistics of it. JSeries Message Library, this is just a way to take Java code and make it into a JSeries message. So with the Sparta application where we're trying to disseminate these tracks and we ultimately want to get them into J message, we just created a way that makes it easier for application developers to translate code to J. So just to recap, we established in July of 2023 This slide's a little bit old, but we're still in a pilot phase, so we'll be going through the .MLPF working group this spring, and hopefully be institutionalized in a career path for Marines to be able to do this work at future units. And so with that, I will kind of take any questions.
Hey, how's it going, Captain? This is I'm William Bush. I'm the AODR for the Marine Corps, and I'll get with. I have a couple questions, but I'll save some for Lieutenant Colonel Bach. The first question I have: how many applications do you already have out in use? Do you have an estimate or approximate number of these applications?
Five to six. I mean, it's so. I hate to be like that, but like we have like MVPs, which they function, but they're like not. We haven't like given up on them. If that makes sense. We haven't. So.
Okay. No, and I'm not looking for an exact number. I'm just asking. One thing that we've been trying to figure out and work with you guys is figure out how we want to do the accreditations for these applications. I haven't seen a lot of these come my way. Number one. Do we take the time? I'm not so much looking at the RMF process slowing things down. So let me just be frank. We need to get things out fast. You're doing DevSecOps, you're doing those things, so I'm tracking there. Do we look at PII? Who's evaluating those things? That's kind of the authorization process outside of RMF that I do have concerns with. And again, I'm not putting this on you. I just want to ask, do you guys take that into consideration, PII, information, PHI, and information like that as you build these applications?
We do, yes, sir. So we utilize the Army's platform and their security. And so like some of these things I've alluded to, like security's working out their thing is for instance, my career, that has PII in it. And so we went through the RMF process and we did it the right way. And so that obviously it can slow down, but like we can't put anything obviously into a cloud environment without that. So we inherit, our AO has inherited the controls of the Army.
Okay, so it sounds like the Army's doing a lot. You guys are working together with the Army on this.
Yeah, so they haven't. So like I said, we have about 15 Marines. They have 200 soldiers, and probably 30 of those are dedicated to security and platform. And so they're very robust.
No, those are all the questions I have for you. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Great job.
Good morning, Captain. My name is Chris Kerwood. I'm with the NAVAIR Headquarters Cloud Team. And I have a question about the Marine Corps Software Factory. I'm curious if you could share some of the advancements or some of the capabilities, added capabilities for agility with feedback return from problem report of the software application to the actual delivery of the solution. If you've seen, what kind of advancements you've seen with value metrics regarding the traditional processing you may have been following, and how quickly you can enhance the speed of relevance.
Sure. So the first way I'll answer that is we work basically every couple days with the sponsor. So for instance, when we made the Raider application, Chief Officer Evans, who's the Spectrum Officer at MARSOC, like we were in touch with him once or twice a day. And then, and so like we had that working in like 100 days, most of which was waiting for the API. A lot of, like, to contrast that, so if he wanted a Raider, what he would have to do is have his boss submit something called an UNS, urgent needs statement. So that would take him, the boss, probably 6 months to a year. Then he'd give it to CDD, and that would take a year to 2 years. And so any commander's already out of his seat by then. And so, like, I would say typically if they were like, hey, we're going to invest the time and we're going to do the ask and we want the Marine Corps to spend the money on it, they're typically looking at 2 to 3 years before they're actually seeing something. And so by contrast, we had something to them in 100 days. And same thing with like the Crusader application. Mick Willis said, hey, this would probably take 3 to 4 years to get something back, and we had it to him in 6 months. And that one was actually incredibly complex.
Perfect, thank you.
Morning, Captain. Great speech.
Thank you.
I have a question. I work in the narrowband program office here for the Space Force in San Diego, and we're a division from LA Air Force Base, and we're looking at strategy after the MEO satellites. They're like 3G network satellites we use for SOCOM. After those, are obsolete around 2040 time frame. We're looking at, embedding the warfighter with something smaller, faster, more adaptable. So are you looking at anything for like encrypted technology for radio or any type of device for that type of warfare, either now or in the future?
No, sir.
Well, it might be a good idea, but I'm just suggesting it because I'm writing a strategy paper as a tech writer for the Space Force. So I'm just trying to get ideas throughout this conference and try to come up with a plan. They have plans in the works now, but they're just looking for more ideas.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so the way we function is none of, like as I said, I'm an infantry, and my Marines are communication Marines, and so like for instance, the Sparta or the Crusader application, like we're not radar theory and we're not signals, but like what we do is we work with our stakeholder who like brings it to us, and then we're like, yeah, this is like a big deal. That it appears, like I said, the first thing we have to ask is somebody else doing this? Which, like, to me, that's like cyber's pretty big, and we're not. And so we would have to adjudicate, like, does this need a response from us? And then we'd have to bring in those people. But like, none of my guys are just like super like cyber heavy. We bring those people in as like the problems come to us.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Morning, Matt. Chris Getchell with Booz Allen. So one of the questions I had, obviously, is you guys are building these apps. The big question there is what do you do for sustainment and updates? So obviously, right now with legacy systems, you update C2PC, it breaks something from TCS or AFATIDS, right? So what is your plan for that going forward?
Thanks, Chris. Application dependent. So, for instance, my career application, MMEA really loved it, and so they kept asking for more and more features. At that time, we had 7 Marines, and I said, hey, I got you to the end of the roadshow season, and after that, I can keep security up to date. That's easy for us. We're on the Army's platform. We'll fix the CVEs. We'll fix any kind of bugs there are. We'll make sure we're supporting during roadshow season. But if you want more work, you got to figure it out. And so they hired TSO, Technology Support Organization, who is doing active feature work on the micro application. So that's an example. Application like Raider, this one, it's in the TAC Product Center, so the security burden is much less because it's on somebody else's and it's just a plugin. And so after about a year of testing with the different soft units, they said, hey, can you do like these 3 things? And now we've kind of roadmapped where it would fit nicely in our schedule, and we're going to do those 3 things because it's such a good application for them. One mechanism I like to use to like kind of think about this is in venture capital, there's this term called power law. Power law is if you invest in 30 different companies, one company is going to make you $100 billion. Companies 2 and 3 might make you $10 billion, and then companies 5 through 30, you're actually going to lose money on. And so, like as we look to, that's kind of how we use to like adjudicate what should we be devoting our time to. Should it be new applications that could have outsized impact, or is there certain applications that if we put the ball down and there's not a TSO to pick it up, like it's going to die, and therefore it like deserves our attention because it's like that money maker for us, like as an organization, or as like the institution as the Marine Corps. But there's also applications where SnapDB, for instance, is just at some point it just wasn't worth our time, and so we basically we've taken it down from like we're doing the scans and whatever, but there's like no further work going, and I think we're okay with that. Eventually, though, like for instance, this application, Reserve, Marine Corps Recruiting Command specifically said, when you're done building it, can we have it? And we said, sure. So one of the very first questions that we ask when we start this process is like, what's our end game with this? Because we don't want to get to a spot where we're juggling too many like glass balls and we're going to drop one of them. So it is like of top concern, but it's either transition, maintain ourselves, like low, undercase M, or retire.
Thank you. Excellent presentation. Appreciate
Thanks, sir.
it.
Dave Mrazek, Glen Island Command, former data system software officer. Where are we going with software in the Marine Corps? And how many Marines do you currently have developing software?
I'm sorry, you say where are we going with it?
Yeah, so I know headquarters is looking at pushing software development out within the Marine Corps. But, we used to be 1,600 people. Now, obviously, I don't even know if you have hundreds. So are we looking to make it an MLS and then move it forward?
Yes, sir. So we're in a pilot status now. We're about halfway through, 18 months out of 3 years pilot. And this spring, we're going through the .MLPF, the DWG. And so that process, the outcome of that will be whether this capability gets institutionalized. We're chewing on two different models. One model is you take the Marines after they've done 3 years in Austin, and they go to whether it's a different MEF or MIG, and they're doing that application with reachback support from like headquarters in Austin to make sure that stuff in one MEF is also getting to 2 MEF and 3 MEF, and like as that synergistic support centralized. And then there's another model that is probably less popular, and I probably shouldn't even say it, but like kind of like a mothership model, where it's like the mothership is in Austin, and you're sending out these teams to kind of continue what we're doing now, but you're in-housing all that capability in one location that is like being able to go out. One of the biggest concerns we have is sending some of these talented Marines who the commanders don't understand what they're capable of, or like, why do I need software, or what's that? And so we're trying to be incredibly diligent about picking especially this beginning, the first location with the first commander who knows what these guys are capable for, instead of they be taxed out to.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, thanks everybody.